Hello, everyone. Welcome to Better Talks. I am your host, Brahim Mansa Kalon. I'm here today with a special guest, and I'm going to allow him to introduce himself to us.
Good morning, Raheem. My name is Paul Angelle. I'm a small business coach who focuses most of my attention, most of my work on business planning and accountability. I'm located in Sunset, Louisiana, in the United States. Um, I have all four of my grandparents are direct descendants of the French Canadians who were expelled in the mid 1700s. Um, our culture is known as Cajun. Have you ever heard of Cajun? I know you're a foodie, so maybe you've heard of Cajun food, but um, I'm used to being surrounded by people who have very thick Cajun French accents, but have no idea how to speak French because they're very much Americans. If you've ever dealt with Americans, you know two things you can guess about most of us. We speak one language and we wear white socks all the time.
Starting a business at times is not easy. We have the ideation, having the idea. Most people have the idea, but they don't know how to put it on paper. How would you define strategic planning at all?
Well, it's my belief that a lack of a clear plan is a recipe for disaster. If you don't have a plan, but you succeed, you did that in spite of yourself. you could have succeeded more, is my belief, because planning is everything. And it requires a real honest knowledge of the self. You have to know why you're doing what you're doing. Because in reality, nobody cares. Nobody cares what you do until they know why you're doing it. Once they make that connection. So if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, I suggest that's the first thing anybody does with approaching planning. Find out why. What's your why? And I spend a lot of time with clients on this because I want to pick that scab. I want to know the why. And everyone says the same thing. When you ask them, what's your why? What's your purpose? Why are you doing all this stuff? And they all say, oh, my family, right? I mean, it's my husband, my wife, my kids, it's my family. And while everyone I know who has a family holds their family in high regard and might kill or die for them, but that's not your why. It's more of a responsibility and obligation. What's the kind of event that you don't need an alarm clock for? Let's look at your calendar and see what's on your calendar that's not work-related appointments. You'll usually find that it's not dominated by the family. It might be dominated by trips or outings or purchasing a car, things that you've planned and scheduled. But once you get honest about what your why is, then you can set goals. And I work with people. I'm a growth expert. I push growth. And when I'm working with someone, I can confidently tell them, hey, we're going to have more business in the next 6 months for sure, which means you're going to have more money. And if you're going to have more money, what is it you're going to get? What is it you're going to do? Who are you going to be if you have more money specifically? And these are the goals. They might want a new kitchen. They might want a second home. They might want to finally trade in their old horrible car. Goals are very personal and they can be anything. And I have heard some wild ones, but once I've got clarity, like, the goals are smart, they're specific, they're measurable, they're actionable, they're relevant, and they have a deadline. Once we have those goals, then we can assign numbers to them. And for example, if your business made $1 million in business last year, which you were able to personally, as the owner, take 100,000 out of. I'm stink at math, so my examples are usually round numbers divided by 10. But that's 10%, right? If you decide you want a $300,000 car, I don't want a $300,000 car. I've just had clients who wanted one, and so we got them one. A $300,000 car means you're going to need $30,000 more to take out of your business a month, which times 10 means you need to do another 300,000 a month. That's 300,000 a month. That's 10, 300,000 a month. We're talking about $4 million. You can do it, but it means we're going to have to quadruple your business. And quadrupling your business, you're used to doing $80,000 worth of business a month. And it works if it's 8,000 or if it's 15,000. But if you're used to doing 80,000 a month, and now we got to do 350,000 a month, what's going to break? Who's going to quit? Who's going to jump out the window? What happens if you triple? Because growth isn't cheap. It's expensive, but we can do it and we break it down. But once I've got clarity and specifics on the goals, whatever they are, the rest is just math. But the strategic plan starts at the beginning. It starts with the why. It incorporates the goals, and goals that have come after a result of some pretty deep internal reflection where, what do I want to have? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? Because people measure success with money. They measure it with experiences. They measure it with time with people. But the money itself is not very motivating. A stack of money is cool for a picture, but it's worthless. But when I see a stack of money, I think of all the cool, nonsensical things I could buy with that money, or, how I could pay for my kids' college, or whatever it is. The goal is the motivating part. So once we have a plan with a dollar amount and it's based in goals, which means we have a way to motivate ourselves and we have something to hold ourselves accountable to, the math is just a matter of knowing your numbers, knowing what it takes to get what you want, right? If you want a client and your experience is telling you that if my marketing gives me 10 leads, 6 of them will jump on a sales call or a discovery call with me, and 6 will agree to, we'll schedule that. 5 will show up maybe. And if 5 show up, 3 will sign up as a client and 2 will pay. So to get 2 paying customers, I needed 10 leads. And the numbers can be wildly crazy. I've seen 6,000 leads turn into 10 appointments, but that was some internet, really wide. But knowing your numbers like that, we can create a marketing plan, because we've determined in order to increase our revenue by 4 times, we need 4 times as many leads. Well, what are we spending on marketing? We might need to increase that. We might need to get more creative. We might need to bring in either a vendor or an employee to kind of tackle that, because none of this growth is going to be possible without the first part, which is the marketing, the people that could become clients or customers of your business. Then we have to know about sales, because sales and marketing are 2 different things. Sales hasn't changed in thousands of years from what I've seen, but marketing changed from what it was 6 weeks ago. And it's going to be different in 6 weeks from now. What works, it's a moving target, but so you have to stay on top of it, but it's 2 separate things. But if you're a business owner, you have to have a strategic plan, especially if you're a new business owner and you've started a business because you were very skilled at whatever it is you do. Like, really good cooks often open restaurants. Rarely do those restaurants succeed. And it's not because the food wasn't good. It's because the chef knew how to cook, but wasn't really cut out or trained or skilled at being an entrepreneur. Because there's sales, there's marketing, there's your people, there's the place where you do business, there's your financial accounting and your bookkeeping, and there's your policy systems and procedures, and you're paying attention to the revenue and expenses and all your metrics and knowing all your numbers. And there's cooking, but cooking might be a 10th, one of 10 things that you have to do when you're an entrepreneur. Not everybody's really cut out for it. It's actually a skill set of people that might have something wrong with them because they can't focus on just one thing. An ultimate technician can perfectly cook a meal consistently every time, the right way, and have a high standard of quality. But don't hire them as your accountant. They're probably not going to be the best person for that. The entrepreneur knows enough about all of these things to know when to say, this is where I delegate, or this is where I hire, or this is where I get a vendor to do that. But all of this needs to be in a plan. If all of that's in a plan, you can break it down by quarters or months or even weeks. And so if you have a marketing plan, and let's say you need 10 leads a week, well, we want half of them to come from the website. We want, so 10 of them come from the website, 2 of them come from social media, and the other 3 come from referrals. That's what our goal is. And then after the week's over, what happened? How many leads did we get? Where did they come from? And what happened to them? How many of them set appointments? How many of them showed up? How many of them signed to become customers? And how many of them paid? And once you start connecting with the numbers, it becomes really easy to have sustainable success, which is what you need if you want to even think about growing, right? You have to have a process that you believe in. You have to have expectations. And one of the mindset things that comes from planning and the inevitable accountability to the plan, because you can create a wonderful plan, but if it's in a drawer or in a folder on your desktop, on your computer, it's not doing anyone any good. I don't care how good it is. It's worthless. Mm. But if you've got a strong ability to hold yourself accountable, if you don't have a plan, what exactly are you holding yourself accountable to? Don't know. We don't know if we're succeeding, and you need to be able to measure things. And if you can't measure them, you can't improve them. So the combination of planning and accountability, the accountability lets us know what's happening because the numbers don't lie. People lie. I hate to say this, but I think people lie more than they tell the truth. But numbers don't. Numbers will always tell the truth. And when I find entrepreneurs, especially new entrepreneurs, who are reluctant to embrace their numbers, it's a red flag that we've got a mindset issue with money and numbers that we need to overcome if we're going to succeed. Because if I didn't have this. I grew up, me and my siblings were poor, but we were very competitive. So we were very good at sports. So we got to go to schools, we didn't go to the public schools. We went to the fancy private schools who had a emphasis on athletics, right? They had baseball and football and soccer and basketball teams, and they wanted the good players. So they would let you have free tuition if you played sports, kind of like college, but it was in high school, or it was actually started much younger. So we were very competitive. Ever since I was very young, if my sister did something, I needed to outdo her. And if I outdid her, then she needed to outdo me, but I've run into people who have these mindset issues like, well, I should not have more success than my brother because my parents, it would hurt them if he was not as more successful than me. And in my experience, I'm just like, what? you don't want to take him down a notch? What's wrong with you? So I have to realize and respect and appreciate that people are coming from different places, and you have to address that. If you have a problem with that, well, you have some options. I'm going to help you grow. How will that growth help your brother? Maybe your brother should be a part of this if this growth is going to dwarf whatever he's doing, if that's important to you. Or maybe instead of your success being measured by how expensive your car is or how much money you make, how much do you give back? Become, a foundation benefactor and create a charity or create scholarships at your school. You can do things that doesn't necessarily have to wreck the social order that's got this mindset problem. you know, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can't necessarily fix any kind of personality things, but we can certainly adapt. We can certainly make things rule. But all of that comes out if you start with the why and then you create the goals and make sure they track with the why. Because if you told me your goals for the rest of this year was to spend more time with your family this year, and that was your why, and that was what you wanted to do, and then your business goals were you wanted to acquire 3 of your competitors and integrate them with your company in the next 6 months. Well, if you've ever done that, you would know that's going to take all your time. There is no way you can do that and have more time with the family. Maybe we could say the plan is in 2025, I want to have more time with the family. So in order to do that, I'll be able to take myself out of my business a little bit by merging with these other companies. And once that's all clean and done, I should have that done by the end of the year. Then 2025, I don't work Mondays and Fridays. Wow. You know, how does that change my work-life balance? But you have to make sure the goals track with the why. And once the goals track with the why and the goals are very specific, the rest is just math. And we can motivate if we know the goals. So if I work on a business plan with a client, and let's say we spend 10 hours creating the comprehensive plan, we would have spent 8 hours on the goals. The goals are the single most important, because if I'm holding you accountable to parts of a business plan, I need to be able to motivate you. Ultimately, you can motivate yourself, but if I don't know deeply what your goals are, you know, and why they are your goals, they're no use to me. And I'll use the example because I love to say this because I'm proud of it. But when I was in high school, I was very fast. I was a fast runner. I played baseball, stole a lot of bases. I mean, I was faster than everyone. I ran a 4.4 second 40-yard dash, and that's fast. That's world-class speed. I'm 53 now. I'm fairly certain that I can no longer run a 40-yard dash that fast, right? I mean, why would I? I mean, there's nothing more pathetic than men in their 50s racing. You know, what are you doing? You're going to break a hip. Stuff. Come on, slow down. But let's say I'm out in Sierra Leone. I get in the wilderness and I notice an angry lion is running towards me. I'm going to get pretty close to that 4.4 40-yard dash time because I have what I consider proper motivation. I'm motivated now. It doesn't matter. You know, all of the reasons in my head for not succeeding or not doing it, they don't matter if you don't get away from this threat. Same would be true if it was a bear or if someone threw a live grenade at my feet. I would find a gear. You would be impressed by how fastly I ran away from that. That's what goals do. Not in the same way, the fear, but it's a proper motivation. Because if your goal was to spend 2 weeks in Greece on the, you know, a lavish vacation with the whole family, and you told the whole family, we're doing this, and they're psyched about it, no part of you wants to go home and say, yes, honey, we're not taking that vacation. We're going to go spend a long weekend in rural Ontario. We're not going to go to Greece for 2 weeks like we planned because I had a bad quarter at work. No one wants to have that conversation. That motivates you to just simply not have a bad quarter. And not having a bad quarter boils down to either not having a bad month or making sure if you do have a bad month, the other 2 months in that quarter, fix it. So staying on course, keeping yourself accountable to a comprehensive plan that's based on goals. The industry doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the business is because all of that is true. It gets complicated when you have multiple owners with competing or very different goals. But it's just a matter of, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Sometimes when I'm working with partners, I notice based on their answers to me separately, I think the two of you should have a retreat away from the office where you go home and here's a long list of questions you should ask each other away from distractions and, either get on the same page or realize that this is oil and water. We're not going to succeed and have any kind of sustainable success with this company with these opposing goals. Or, because when you have a partner who shares your goals, that's synergy, because two people aligned can do way more than they could collectively do individually. But if they're not aligned, it's the opposite, right? You're going to do probably less than you could have done on your own. And that realization, while sometimes it's painful because the partner could be a very close friend, but you've got to separate the business. You've got to have a purpose, and you've got to have goals, and you've got to know what your numbers are. You need to know how many leads it takes to get a paid customer. You need to know that. Everybody needs to know that. And I love the fact that nobody knows that, because the fact that nobody knows that means I can make instant impacts with small business owners who I work with. And that's great for business. I mean, if when I have a client that grows and they're happy, that's the best way to get another client. It's way better than spending $6,000 a month on Google or some, expensive marketing campaign.
You mentioned growth. Should we plan for growth, or growth is just a byproduct of some of the activities that we have been doing that is in line with our goal, our why of why we're doing what we're doing? Or should we strategically sit down and plan for growth, how to expand the company? It could be a product line, it could be franchising or licensing.
Right. Well, yeah, growth is an effect, and causes have effects, and actions have consequences, and you reap what you sow. I think it's very important not only to believe that you can and will grow. I believe you need to expect it. You need to expect that you're going to grow. The reason you need to expect that you're going to grow is, like I said, if you're used to doing $80,000 of business in a month, and the business plan now calls for $300,000 a month, I bet the organization, just the head count, the people with their capacities that produce that $80,000 a month is not sufficient to also do $400,000 a month. So when you break it up by quarters, you look at, okay, this is what we like to grow every quarter. I don't put too much stock in like a month's numbers, because I don't care how good or bad you are. Every year, you're going to have 1 month where the planets line up and everything is beautiful and perfect and money falls from the sky. Everything you touch turns to gold. You're also going to have months where it seems like you accidentally crap in the bed every morning. It just, nothing you do works. Everything bad that can happen. So you're going to have at least one terrible month, and you're going to have at least one phenomenal month. But you shouldn't pivot based on those months. So you kind of, a quarter, if you have a bad quarter, that is usually the result of 2 or 3 bad months. That's alarming. That's a concern. That's where you want to pivot and make corrective action. But you don't want to overreact to a single month. But when you're planning, when you're making your business plan, we look at the first quarter. Okay, the first quarter, if we're on target and we hit all our plans, we're going to average this much revenue a month. And if your average case is this much, that means we're going to have this many customers. If we're going to have this many customers, it means we're going to have this many sales calls. It means we're going to have this many leads from marketing. It means we're going to have this much work to do. Who breaks in the first quarter with that revenue? Because we're going to work to hit that number. I'm going to bring you the business. What you need to do is to make sure you can deliver. So we look at that first quarter. Who's the hire in that first quarter based on that number? I call it revenue-based hiring, but we can break it down to the actual workload. It depends if it's a service or a product type business. But we do that for the second quarter. Now we're going to see growth in the second quarter. So instead of doing, $100,000 a month, we're going to be doing $200,000 a month. What breaks there? Oh, I need to get another salesman. I need to get a receptionist. I need to get an internal graphic designer / social media marketing person Who are we hiring along the way? So that hiring plan is where we're anticipating the growth. Other things we think of is if your business is a business that needs inventory or a lot of you have to pay for a lot of stuff. You do things like we do the math and we try to secure either lines of credit or funding or bring on investors. We do that before we need it, because the only thing worse than not having enough business is having enough business but not being able to deliver what you promised to get that business. That's demoralizing and defeating, and you have to plan for that growth. But you don't just plan for the growth. You don't just believe you can grow. It's going to happen, and you're doing the things that you're gonna do. It's like if your grass is long and you see dark clouds and the weatherman said it's going to rain for the next week, what's going to happen. You need to go mow your grass in a hurry, because you might not be able to for a week, and it's going to be even twice as long as it is now, because you know what to expect. And once you get to the mindset of having expectations, your expectations more or less manifest. I mean, not magically or spiritually, but when you expect something to happen, it happens. And growth is an obvious expectation of an increased focus on planning and accountability and investment. It just is, if it's done correctly. If you're not expecting to grow, don't spend any time or any money on it, because it's not going to grow. You can just keep doing what you're doing.
What are your 3 top advice to a small business owner, a young entrepreneur?
Well, number one, and I see this all the time, that's why I always have to say it. The younger, the more, if you have a business, have a business. Form, in the United States, we have LLCs, but form a corporation or a company. That corporation or company must have its own bank account and your separate bank account. Keep these things separate. If this is not your jam, if this is not your skill set, if this is not something you're really strong at, outsource to a bookkeeper. That's usually the first vendor I recommend people hiring, because you want to keep your money separate. It's okay if you're taking personal money and dumping it into the company so you can make payroll. You account for that. That's a owner distribution. It's opposite of that. It's an owner infusion, or it's a loan from the owner. And then an owner distribution could be that loan being paid back. But these transactions they have serious tax implications. And if you're a Canadian-based business, you want to be very wary of any sort of tax beneficial tactics, if you will, because corporate and personal taxes, if you're not doing it smart, you can end up getting taxed twice and you'll have no money left. You want to keep it separate. It's okay if it means your business isn't making as much money as you thought it was. It's okay. I would rather bad financial news than good financial news that isn't true, because good financial news that isn't true is going to do that. So one thing is separate your books, legitimize the business, and keep it separate, and make sure your bookkeeping is flawless. That's number one. Number two, know your numbers. Know your numbers. Know about your marketing. Know your sales. Know your closing percentages. Know your funnel, your onboarding. Know your revenue and your expenses, your profit margin. Know that, and don't just know it when it's the end of the year. Know that every month, at least, maybe every week, depending on how bad a shape it is. I've required people to give me weekly financial reports, because we're trying to dig out of a hole. But number one is separate your money and legitimize. Number two would be know your numbers. And number three is, when you grow, always make it your goal. If you're adding people to your team, your goal should always be someone who is smarter, more educated, more experienced, and more competent than yourself. sometimes you have to settle for someone as good as yourself, but too many times people will hire down, and they'll hire people that they have to train more. If you're looking for people who have more to give than you're giving yourself the gift of time. You're giving your company the gift of their education, their experience, and their talent. But always strive for that, because I know people who strive for the opposite, and that's a killer.